this video will be a Protection Warrior PvP guide video, and you heard it for 10.1.5. Protection Warrior is actually very good. Um, in the sense where a tank being somewhat okay is actually very good for a Protection Warrior. Actually, if you see on NA, I think there is like there is like 7 Protection Warriors above 2k, or like I think even one 2.4k, which is actually very good for something like as deflated as this season. So it means that it is playable and doable, and I will also explain why it actually is for Protection Warrior. I'm going to talk about the stats that you should go for. The embellishments is always the same, so I'm not going to talk too much about it. Enchants is also quite the same, so I'm not going to talk too much about it. I'm going to talk about the builds. I'm going to go a bit in depth on why you take specific talents, but that's it. And then PvP talents, and then we're going to talk a bit about 2s, 3s, and also soul shuffle. But I'm going to talk also about RBGs and what you can actually do as a Protection Warrior in an RBG. We're going to talk also about the rotation, and then maybe macros here and there if you do need them. I'm going to give you also some tips and just in general my general thought about Protection Warrior. Hopefully I will keep this guide short. So let's talk about the stats. What you really want to go for is mostly mastery, which is actually very cool because both my arms and my fury warrior actually want mastery, so you don't really go out of the way to build like another set of gear. Although what I would like is like a full mastery build for this character, and I think it could like give you a lot of oomph for your one shots, which is actually super nice, and also like the chances to block and such. Again, lowering the damage that you actually take in PvP, which is quite nice. You want the forset. The forset is actually quite interesting because it gives a lot of damage to shield slam after you used last stand, and actually like stops like after 20 seconds after last dance ends. You will get extra damage on your shield slam, which is your ability that actually you're going to pretty much spam it whenever it's up, so it's additional damage, and also reducing the damage they deal to you by 5%. I think in PvP it's 2.5%, and I think the damage is also reduced, but still it is actually adding some good damage. And since Protection Warrior actually lacks a bit of the consistent damage, that's actually a very cool thing to have on the 4-set. Shield Slam is also doing more damage on the 2-set, and also reduces its cooldown of Last Stand. Again, wanting to use Last Stand as much as possible, and also the effects are doubled whenever you are actually using Last Stand. So it's actually going to be quite interesting to play around that. So you want to actually use Last Stand whenever you're going to go burst, and not only for survival. In general, they're not going to target you, but if they do, you're going to be tanky enough to actually sustain a long while, and they will just switch out because they know that you are kind of unkillable. And chance, it's quite like obvious speed. We have sustained strength. Again, the strength and stamina legs. Shadow belt clasp on the belt. We have Plains Runner's Breeze again for the speed. And then we have like mastery on both rings with also plus 82. I mean gem also mastery and also the enchant mastery. We have double trinket because we're human. I don't know if I can recommend going human in this current state. I think Night Elf is better. I think Iron Dwarf is probably better. Dark Iron Dwarf, excuse me, is better. I think Orc is also quite better. But human is also quite flavorful because again, having 2 sets of trinkets actually gives you a lot of damage whenever it procs both together with your damage. Anyways, let's now talk about the talents. We have some great talents to work with. The good thing is, whenever you're using your Thunderclap, you're going to have rend on everyone. So you basically can just ignore using rend. You actually do not want to because you're going to spend rage, and I think that rage is going to be more useful to spend on revenge. Now revenge is not really doing any real damage, that's the truth. So you want to spam revenge, but you don't want to make damage with it. It is mostly to get your violent outburst on your spectre, to actually get the 200% more damage on chill slam. Not really thunderclap, but you can do that in RPGs, for example, for spread pressure. But chill slam is quite nice because again, it gives you those 150k crits, for example, or more likely 80k normal hits, 90k normal hits, which again is going to do a lot of damage when you're going to burst. We're also playing with Unstoppable Force, so you really can just do thunderclaps whenever you are avataring. It does a lot of damage, at least consistently. And what you want to do is like avatar into a shockwave, which results often by a 100k crit whenever you have like no defensives up. And again, you can just easily do like a shield charge to get like the 4-second stun, and then you're going to wait for the stun to be gone. You have avatar up, you're going to do a shockwave, which is going to result to a 2-second stun basically, and because it's like the art, I think even it's 1.5 seconds because it's CR from the 3 seconds. And then you're going to do even a Stormbolt if you want to really lock them down. But what I do is the Stormbolt on the off target, so you can actually have some spread pressure. But it's really a good build. And you use Thunderous Roar again to just add more damage, generate some rage. But you're not going to like improve the bleeds because you have bleeds, you have deep wounds, you have rend, but it's not really meant to be a bleed build. So you will have bleed, probably rend top 2, top 3 damage because you're going to spread with your thunderclap, especially in melee cleaves. And that's actually the dream scenario if you're playing versus melees. You're going to have a lot of damage because of just your presence in those team fights. I just really like the current way I'm playing Protection Warrior. There are a few points where you can actually just spend it elsewhere. What I sometimes like is to remove. Excuse me. It's to either remove intervene if I feel like we're playing versus casters. It's good for the mobility, but you can just put in leech. So you have double leech. Plus, you can also enchant yourself if you want to. Then you have like some increased leech on everything. Now, that's a bit greedy. I do prefer to play with intervene, but there's a few things that you can maybe swap. For example, intervene into bitter immunity. You can also just keep intervene and just remove rallying cry, for example, although I would not like do that. But if you really want to, you can remove that and go for another talent, for example, the berserker shot, which nobody really uses it, but it's sometimes very useful whenever you're playing versus a rogue and he incaps your healer. You could actually just like remove the incap on the healer. The same for fear if you're playing versus a warlock and you're using it and you're like 12 yards away from him. I mean, like inside the 12 yards, you can actually use that and you can just save them a lot of like pain to actually heal, like overheal your allies. So you have some good things that you actually can pick that you should not really pick as an arms warrior or a fury warrior. But since you're a protection warrior, you can actually just go for the utilities and have some good time with it, right? You can also just remove pain and gain and go for a wrecking throw or shadowing throw. Again, you have choices to make. It depends about you and just in general which one you want to spend those choices. The reason why I'm taking seismic reverberation instead of public training is that the damage is really irrelevant from revenge, but also like the 10 more rage that you're going to use is good for violent outbursts, but I generally am actually very rage starved, and sometimes I have like 20 rage, I don't have 30 rage, and have nothing to spend on it. And again, I want to spend my rage to get like more violent burst. So I know sometimes you want to wait for a bit more rage to actually spend that. But I think in general, if you can spend rage whenever you can as a protection warrior, it will get you going, especially with the current set of spells that you have. What you can do, which is very greedy, is that you remove Thunderous Roar and Wall Strikes, and you go for Spear of Bastion into Elysian Might, which is going to give you 15% increase crit damage whenever you're going to Spear of Bastion, and you're going to remove like 1 point, for example, the one-handed weapon, and you're putting in Elysian Might because you need more than 3 points, you need 4 points. Then you can actually just do a Spear of Bastion into an avatar, into a shield charge, into a shockwave, into, let's say, a violent outburst shield slam, and you crit that. You actually one-shot someone. It's actually very impressive. Also, you have to execute whenever you can. It doesn't matter if you have something else to press. Execute is actually a high value ability for protection warriors, but for some reason we do more damage on protection warrior than as a arms warrior. So whenever you're going to do an execute, it can actually crit for way more than arms warriors outside of their burst, and you are actually not bursting and you're going to do more damage than them. So it's actually very good to actually have that, like, not really pad damage, but that stickiness to their health being low, and they have to keep on healing although you're not popping your CDs. And whenever you are going to pop CDs, you're going to actually hurt them very much. If we talk about the spec tree real quick, there's a few things that we take and some things that we do not take. For example, we are taking Rend, obviously, because we have Thunderclap and Blood and Thunder, but we're not taking Instigate because the damage is really not that good. Although it generates Rage, again, it's interesting for that part, but you have to lose something else that is probably more interesting. We're also taking Imperishable Wall, although you can take a second Chill Wall charge. I personally prefer the generates an additional rage on Shield Slam and also reduces the remaining cooldown of Shield Wall. What you can do is actually take Defender's Aegis and play around immovable objects, so you can have more avatar usages, but it is not very it's not a very long avatar proc, right? So if you're going to use shield wall, you're not going to have a big avatar proc where you're going to use a lot of that momentum. That's not really the case, and often you're going to use shield wall defensively and you won't have any chances to counter pressure with it. Anger management is quite nice again, so it reduces avatar, man. So it's the better version, for me at least, from Arms Warrior. I think Arms Warrior is closest Smash and Bladestorm. Closest Smash is quite nice. Bladestorm is alright, but it's not like Avatar. Avatar, like, imagine if you can actually just reduce the rage, the CD of Avatar with anger management on the Arms Warrior. That would be actually very busted, for example. Massacre, of course, we take it because it's a high value ability, in my opinion. So you want it to be able to use to use it on like as many times as possible. So 35% is better than 20%. Of course, any modifier on a shield slam we take. We also take Bloodborne because it adds more damage from Thunderous Roar. But imagine if you're playing with Spear of Bastion, you can just remove Bloodborne and take something else. For example, you would have 2 points. You could spend it on Disrupting Shout versus Casters, which is a very acceptable spell to use, in my opinion. You can also play with the Blood Surge to get more rage with your bleed effects. That's also a possibility. Although you really not are playing with a bleeds whenever you're actually going for Spear of Bastion. But you have many possibilities. You can also take, like, for example, Tough as Nails versus Rogues. You're facing like double Rogue, for example, which can be possible in Soul Shuffle. You're going to basically kill them if they're going for you. Of course, if they're not going for you, it's a bit useless, but if they do, they would take a lot of damage. You have also spell block, but the CD is very long. For that reason, I'm not really taking it. But if the CD was a bit lower, like for example 1 minute, I think it would be a high value talent for caster cleaves, for example. We're taking also the Into the Fray, which is quite nice, especially versus melees. You will get so many like haste procs from it, but also it works on pets, so you will always have 10% haste versus Miam Hunters and versus Demonology Warlock. So it's very cool. It's very good. So also sudden death. I saw a lot of people actually like hesitating for show first for extra damage on Thunderclap. I can understand that if you have like violent outbursts and you have, for example, your unstoppable force. Your Thunderclap will do some good damage, but I do like sudden death. I think sudden death is just way too strong. It makes your execute actually hit like a truck, especially more also as a protection warrior than as a fury warrior or arms warrior. So again, if you're going to test protection warrior and you're full mastery, your execute is going to hit the roof, man. It's actually very, very cool. I really like it. We have Thunder Lord, increasing the radius of Demoralizing Shard, so it's actually very nice. Also, Demoralizing Shard is an ability that is going to reduce the damage they do by 25%. And I want to remind you, if you're going to do that on a sub rogue and he's actually bursting, and you have also your bodyguard PvP talent on your ally, they basically do no damage with the secret technique. So it's something you have to keep in mind. I think it's very strong. We also take all the goodies for shield charge, but we are not taking battering ram. But there is a way where you can take it, because again, you're spending only 5 points and 3 points here. So you have like 2 points to spare. So you can basically just remove Bloodborne, for example, and take battering ram, which is going to add more damage overall. But I'm not really counting on shield charge to kill people. It's really my stun that I'm using it for high value, and also for a charge to reduce the distance between a caster and me, for example. Demoralizing Shout now also generates 30 rage, which is quite nice again to get those violent outbursts, but also will increase the damage you deal to affected targets. So whenever you're ready to burst, you can actually do Demoralizing Shout, which is it lasts 8 seconds. Then you avatar, and then you're going to basically shield charge into a thunderclap, shockwave, and then maybe a shield slam if you have like violent outburst, or just shield slam because it's like one of your hardest abilities to hit on the enemy. So the damage is going to be very high because of that. And then we have also Indomitable, which is quite nice as well. Max health is increased, but also every 10 rage you spend heals you for 1% of your maximum health, and it can add up. It's actually very, very cool. Violent Arbors already explained it, but it's really the flavor that we got from Shadowlands with the 4 set. I wish they actually made it a 4 set to actually being able to use it like a direct proc with Avatar, but they are not really doing that because I think it's too busted. But if they manage to do that one day, maybe for a future tier set, I think Protection Warrior would be very, very fun to play at all times. Now you do have to be in combat for very long, for 8 stacks in general, to have like some good shield slam damage. But yeah, also you have to keep in mind to not thunderclap whenever you're like into a seeing red, a violent outburst proc, because then you're going to consume it, which is quite sad. We don't take battle scarred veteran because it's something cool, but it cannot occur like in 3 minutes. So it's a 3-minute CD, and also the healing receive is interesting in solo shuffle. And also, do you take 80% less damage? I think it's also nerfed in PvP, if I'm not mistaken. But personally, I do not take it because I'm not really the target. If I was the target, I would take it, but I'm never the target in Soul Shuffle. It's not really the way to win versus a Protection Warrior. Stamina and armor, quite interesting. You can take it, but I'm not taking Ravager. I think it's like too clunky to use, and I think there is no real opportunity to use it and to have maximum damage on it. So those are the spec talents that I'm going for. Now PvP talents, I want to talk real quickly. The ones that you want at all times is Bodyguard, Thunderstruck, and Morale Killer. Again, reducing the cooldown of Demoralizing Shot by 15 seconds, and also reduces the damage enemies deal to all targets, not just you. So again, that's the reason why you can actually make a sub rogue very, very much miserable versus you. And just that combined with Bodyguard, which is a causing 40% of all physical damage they take to be transferred to you, it's basically saying to get 40% DR damage reduction on physical damage at all times if they stick with you. Again, the problem with this is whenever someone is going further than 20 yards, Bodyguard gets cancelled and you have to reapply it. Of course, it's a 15-second CD, but some mages don't really understand the do not move assignment. They prefer to kite and then get more damage versus a warrior and let's say a rogue, they should just stand still and everything will be all right, for example. But anyways, it's very strong, very, very strong. This is the reason why Protection Warrior actually is very fun in Soul Shuffle, because if you have those rare lobbies where you're facing a warrior, a Retribution Paladin, a rogue, it is actually a very, very good thing to have. Casey just subscribed, so thank you, although we're making a video. Thank you to you for subscribing to the channel. We have, of course, this at all times versus physical damage dealers, but if you're facing casters, this is quite useless. And that's actually why casters are actually the bane of your existence as a protection warrior in Soul Shuffle, because you will have a lot less uptime, but also a lot less utility, which often than not can result rage in those Soul Shuffle matches. We have Thunderstruck, which is rooting all targets it damages for 4 seconds. The root can be broken by damage, and it's also DRing, so it means that if you're doing one thunderclap, it will be 4 seconds, another one will be 2 seconds, and then another one will be 1 second. What I do sometimes is we're not like targeting the DH. DH is next to me. I'm going to thunderclap it, which will make them root, and I'm not going to touch the DH, and he will just be stuck for 4 seconds. What is good about this ability is it is not DRing with other abilities, so you can actually just like Frost Nova, for example, after it. But I didn't test for every single route, but some routes are not DRing with Thunderclap, which is again a very cool thing to have in those Soul Shuffle matches. Now let's talk really quickly about the other options that you can have. Disarm, I actually never really take it because it means that they are physical. If they are physical damage dealers, I'm actually not scared of them, and I don't really need to disarm because 40% DR on my target, like damage reduction, excuse me, on the target, is way too big. You can overkill it by taking disarm, but there is no real option. You can just remove the root if you want to, or morale here, I think it's too good to pass. I think bodyguard versus physical damages, which is the ones that you want to disarm, is also very good. So you have only the root one to remove, and often the root one is actually the one that actually is going to give us kills or make them actually not able to reach your friends, for example. Shield slam is something I'm never using it. A shield bash is not really that interesting because you have to use it when they're casting, and it's a bit clunky to use. And like shield slam, you're going to use it regardless at all times. So you don't really want to keep it just because they're casting, for example. And a lot of people actually don't cast these days, so especially like the meta ones are not really casting, so you don't really have a lot of value with it. Warpath is quite interesting in RPGs, but that's it. It's not that cool. Dragon Rage charge is actually very good versus casters. For example, if you're playing versus a casting cleave, what I do is I take Dragon Charge and I try to interrupt a lot of things with it. So if they're actually doing a glacial spike to you and you have like the time to do a Dragon Charge to interrupt it, I'll just do it and they get mad because of it. I think it's very cool. You can also push the healer away, so you can make them line your targets, which can maybe sometimes get a kill for free. We have Rebound, which is okay, I guess, but again, the negative outweighs a lot. The 10-second city is very big. I hope that they actually remove the 10-second penalty of using Rebound. If they manage to do that, I think it would be worth it. But right now, like, it's really gimmicky. It depends on who you're facing. If you're facing versus a warlock, like a Destrolock, you can actually do like a lot of spell reflections with the Chaos Bolts, but a lot of spells actually have like those instants that can just remove those spell reflections quite easily. It's just easy. It's just too easy to counter a spell reflect these days. Oppressor is interesting. It's the same as Blood, same as a lot of tanks that actually have that. The issue is you have too many good PvP talents compared to other tanks, like for example Blood DK. Demolition is alright if you're facing like warlocks, for example, to remove those dark pacts, but that's it. But you have to again like sacrifice a good PvP talent for it. And Warbringer is not useful because it's too nerfed, like the damage is too much nerfed, and I don't think it's like good enough anymore. It was very good like Shadowlands, it was a bit alright, I would say, beginning of Dragonflight, and then it got like nerfed to the ground, to the way of like not being able to use it because it's a bit clunky because of the roots, but also the damage is not that good. So that's it. Those are the PvP talents. Now let's talk about 2s, 3s, RBGs, and social phone real quickly. 2s, it's not really good. Let's be honest. You need kind of DPS to finish off targets. You can maybe play with a hybrid, but again, you're going to lose some mortal wounds. I would really recommend to not do 2s as a protection warrior. It's painful because again, your DPS has to survive, and it's the most difficult part. If your DPS is dying, you have no way to win the game. So don't do that. 3s, I think it's quite interesting because you can actually play with, like, let's say a windwalker or a caster, or not like an immobile caster, like for example Shadow Priest, and you can actually make them face tank like those melee cleaves. For example, Shadow Priest that gets trained down by like a warrior and DH, for example, or a warrior and whole DK with bodyguard on is literally unkillable if you have a good healer. The same for I would say windwalkers. Same for another warrior for the MS effect. Again, what you want is really an MS effect. That's the most important thing. Without an MS effect, it's actually very hard to score kills. That's why you cannot really play with an elemental shaman or an enhancement shaman because you will have difficulties. It's very dampening. So personally, I kind of like it, but there's not a lot of people that actually want to play with protection warrior because they do not know how much damage it actually does. But I'm often like top damage. Like for example here, no, that's from a warrior. Never mind, I don't have like one from protection warrior. But you will see on the dummy, the damage is actually quite nice. And the dummy kind of reflects how it is because there is not a lot of PvP modifiers for protection warriors, so that's actually quite nice compared to, like, let's say arms warrior or a fury warrior. Talking about soul shuffle, I think the problem with soul shuffle is there are actually two problems. The first problem is humans are like really sad. You have just people that watch you as a protection warrior and they legit don't want to play and they actually AFK, and or they're like sending you like hate messages, or like people are very mean for nothing, right? Because you picked a spec and they say you should not be able to play a tank. Well, you know what? You have the World of Warcraft Twitter, you have Reddit, you have WoW forums. Tell that to them. I don't think it's a problem of a player. Again, I'm playing all the DPS specs, I'm playing all the healer specs, so it's not really a me problem like forcing myself into a tank. I just play protection warrior because I actually like the playstyle. I think if the tank aspect of protection warrior was gone, I would be playing the hell out of it because I think the playstyle is fun, interactive. I think for a lot of tanks actually, the playstyles are actually very fun in PvP. It is just sad that you're like a tank and spank kind of deal where you're either like too squishy to be able to be a tank, or you're not strong enough to be a DPS. So you're like nowhere, you're like utility. And that's why bodyguard is actually very strong because it makes you be able to survive those melee cleaves. And the ones that actually like the poison for you in soul shuffles are like cast cleaves. Cast cleaves are like something that you're going to play or you're going to come into it in those lobbies, and it will make you want to not play protection warrior anymore. And I will guarantee you that that's the feeling you will have, and that's not you. It's not you. It's not the lobby. It's just purely how the spec works. It just is not good versus casters, and it is also not good with the competitive DPS it can bring to the table. It does some good damage, but it's not like consistent, and it relies on a lot of burst damage. And if your burst is not there, you're feeling like a sub rogue, but like a warrior that is actually sticking to their face and actually is very kiteable. So that's the problem with like versus casters in Soul Shuffle. But if you land in those rare lobbies, it's not really rare, but it can be rare, with full physical, you're going to go 5 wins, 4 wins, or 6 wins. It's like not easy, but you are made for those lobbies. So you're going to feel like, I got some luck there. And that's actually a good feeling. Again, a lot of people will rage from it. That is just how it is whenever you're playing Protection Warrior. But that's why I'm suggesting to play RBGs. And if I'm saying RBGs, do not play as a sole tank. You do not want to play the only tank in the RBG as a protection warrior, because they are not going to respect you. They're going to say go sit at base. That is not going to be good for the protection warrior. You're going to lose your game because a rogue is going to come, is going to sap you, you're going to berserk rage, you're going to basically getting one-shotted in just one go, because again, you're squishy as a tank. You don't have a lot of HP compared to a Garden Druid, for example, and you're playing a very aggressive build as well. What you want to be is in a lobby where you're playing with another tank, for example, Garden Druid, or you're playing with double rogue, or you're playing with something like that, and you want the protection warrior to be in those team fights, because it will bring the safety net to balance roots, it will bring the safety net to warlocks, for example, to the people that actually are like the target. You can bodyguard them, and you're going to make them quite invincible. The damage is also quite nice. You have a lot of like cleave with thunderclap, your shield charge into a big excuse me, shockwave. You can do a lot of damage with avatar, for example. What you can also do is basically play with the PvP talents, which is basically the dragon charge, and disrupt a lot of them just on some maps where you can actually disrupt them to the death. For example, Eye of the Storm, if you're like in the middle and you're doing a dragon charge, you can actually kill them pretty reliably. But again, people have to realize it. You have to find a group to do that. I've seen some protection warriors do that and actually have a lot of success with it. So I would recommend you guys to do that as well. If you have like a main RBG group where you can actually have some fun and people actually like let you play whatever you want to play, you can actually make it work. But again, do not play like a soul tank, because then there is no point. That will not be like the protection warrior's role. The role of a protection warrior is actually being in those team fights, being able to do damage, because it does actually some good damage. It's not like a Garden Druid. It's not going to. It can actually one shot someone, but it misses the MS effect. That's why if you're playing like with a warrior and unholy decay, you have a protection warrior, then a retribution paladin, then you have the rogue, for example, sage bising, and then you have like for example destruction warlock. That's actually a very good comp, and you can actually do some good damage and some good team fights. I've seen worse like team fight wise, so I think protection warrior can have a space there. I want to show you guys really quickly the rotation. I wanted to make a short video, but it's already 32 minutes, but it's shorter than the Fury Warriors one of the Arms Warrior. Anyways, so we are in combat, and what you want to do is actually just spend your rage. And whenever you're spending your rage, you have Seeing Red. That is the buff you get. You see on the top of the screen. And whenever you're going to use some rage, for example, whenever you're going to do Revenge, you get a 2 stack. Whenever you're going to use Execute, is pretty much like also 3 stacks. And you're going to try to stack it as much as possible. Now, you cannot really play out too much around it, because then your damage will be like pitiful, and you don't really want that. But what you want to do is actually like try to generate some rage, which is the hardest part. It's easy with bodyguard, and once you have executed, look, we have violent outburst, and then it's go time. So you can do a shield charge. So what you're gonna do, a shield slam, excuse me. You can just do that all the time, and you can actually do a lot of damage with it. The best thing is to couple it with your avatar. So I'm going to redo it really quickly, hopefully quick enough. Again, I'm gonna charge to get some rage as well. I'll charge again. We have some sudden death procs. Okay, we have the violent outburst. What you want to do is the avatar into demoralizing shot, into your shield block, into a shield charge, turn shockwave, into a shield slam, which is 226k, which is quite big, and then you just are going to destroy them. And you see the damage is really noticing. And I didn't even press my last stand to get that giant shockwave after it gets consumed. But I think it's really cool to actually play around that, and the damage is really noticing. You see, my execute actually crits for 95k, but also normal hits 97k whenever I'm actually in avatar. We have shield slam doing for 170k normal hits, but also 226k crit. We have Rend doing some okay damage. I think it does just more damage than arms, which is quite sad. We have our melees doing some crits from 60k. Again, it's it's going to be like a bit lower in PvP because it's normal with versatility and armor. But you have like shield charge doing for 104k normal hit. Again, that could be lower. I think it's more around 80k's in normal hit. We have Thunderous Roar doing like 35k normal hit. We have Shockwave actually critting for 132k. So you see, it can add up, and whenever you're going to burst, it will do some surprising damage. And people are going to, you're going to laugh at yourself at how damaging it can be. And that's really what I wanted, what I like about Protection Warrior. Just in general, it's just a very fun spec. I really would recommend people that are playing Warrior that are like struggling as Arms and Fury. I really think sometimes you can win more games as Protection Warrior than as a Fury or Arms. Of course, those castle lobbies are going to be the worst, and that those are the ones that are going to make you like reroll or play something else. But if you're like playing versus like the physical lobbies, that those are going to be lobbies where you want to do like one more game, right? So actually very cool to play around that. But anyways, that is pretty much the rotation. I want to talk about really quickly the macros, but it's really the same as Arms, but with something extra. We have Rallying Cry with Last Stand together, so you have that extra oomph, like healing wise, which is quite nice. We have Party 2 Intervene and Party 1. And in general, those are the avatar. And you can actually add some extra things. For example, you can add Demoralizing Shout, which I'm going to do, I think. Pass Demoralizing Shout. It helps because you're going to do a one-shot macro, for example. So if you're going to do that, boom, it shouts, and also avatars, and then you can basically just do a lot of damage. I want to also say that whenever you're going to use shield block, it is going to be doing 30% more damage on your shield slam, which is going to add more damage on your goes. So I would just always try to do shield block whenever you can. Just in general, for your survivability, it's quite nice, but also for the damage part of your shield slam, and also for your consistent damage, I would also just use that so you can actually have some good consistent damage here and there. But anyways, those are like pretty much the macros I'm using currently on my Protection Warrior. In general, it's good fun. I would recommend to stick with someone in social form with like bodyguard. Try to be the shadow of that player. Try to play around the utility and support. You are the augmentation evoker of melees, but you don't have the healings. The thing that is actually making you the augmentation, like the melee augmentation evoker, is basically the bodyguard aspect. If actually you're playing versus an arms warrior and you are playing with a warlock, you can make him basically immortal with that. It's a better demon armor basically, and the damage that is going to get transferred to you is healable for the healers, so it's not going to suicide or you're not going to die because of that, right? I think it's very much like a fun to play around that. But anyways, this is the end of the video. I will post more Protection Warrior content, or like in general, I'm going to put like more social content here and there to showcase the specs that I'm playing. I think it just is fun to play. I would recommend to do that. You should also be at least with thick skin, because people are going to whisper you. People are going to be mad that you took a tank into soul shuffle. The heresy, right? If it was that bad, you would go 0-6. So who cares? They're getting 4-2. But for some reason, those DPSs do not want you to play tank. Too bad. If you're winning, they're getting mad, even more mad. One day I had like a rogue actually like giving me kudos because of how strong it was. Like, it did a lot of damage. Like, I carried games just because of my presence in that soul shuffle match. I was topping meters, but also topping the like bodyguard thing, which is going to help a lot of like those goes that they can have on the second DPS. I think it's very fun to play around that, and just in general, it is a fun spec to play. I would recommend people to try it. Again, thank you for watching this video. I really appreciate you. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. Again, it's very fun. We're doing PvP content, tier lists, guides, whatever you can find about PvP, we're trying to make it. And yeah, it's good fun. So again, thank you for watching. Have a great day. Be sure to stay safe. We will catch you there very soon in the next video. Have a great day. Bye.